Mas eu tinha outra questão para lhe pôr, que era esta. Um polícia bastante conhecido, formado, inglês, que se chama Peter, defende que a Madeleine McCann terá desaparecido a 29 de abril, ou seja, uma semana antes da data oficial do seu desaparecimento. Quer comentar?
É possível, é possível. Eu, neste novo livro, falo nessa hipótese, abordo essa hipótese. Ele, não é só ele era superintendente da polícia britânica. São outras pessoas, advogados e outras pessoas, não é um bando de lunáticos. Eles pegaram em termos do estado do tempo daquela altura, com análise de satélite do estado do tempo, e dizem que aquela fotografia que os pais dizem que, a família, o staff lá dos pais desta criança, dizem que foi efetuada no domingo, na piscina, onde está o pai ao lado, que não é possível porque naquele dia o tempo não estava daquela forma. E, portanto, que para eles aquilo só aparece para provar ou tentar induzir em erro e dizer que a criança está viva naquela altura. Esta teoria tem algumas dificuldades de se comprovar, nomeadamente por causa do registro do infantário, nomeadamente daquele dia 3 mas depois já se vai saber mais tarde que há uma funcionária do infantário que será familiar, amiga de um familiar do padrinho ou da criança desaparecida.
Mas eu lembro-me da folha do registro do infantário estar rasurada.
Sim,
eu me lembro.
Sim.
Well, hi everyone. Finally made it. Did we have difficulties? Absolutely. But we're here anyway. And I really want to welcome you and thank you so much. And I'm sorry that you had to wait there for a little bit, but we'll get there. So I want to welcome Shirley. I sometimes forget she's there, but welcome Shirley. And thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Hello.
Sat there through me rebooting and doing everything that you need to do when something doesn't work. Oh, hi, Emily. Nice to see you here. So, without any ado, I'm just going to go through some of the things I'd like to address today. Now, funnily enough, one of them was that I wanted to do this live because Sonia Poulton has invited me on her breakfast show. And I'm not sure that I would have been able to do it on the computer. So I was testing it here, and good job that I did, because now I know that it's questionable, but we'll get there. The other thing is the main reason for this live. As you may have seen at that beginning clip, Gonçalo Amaral has recently, well, in his book a year or so ago, declared that it's very possible that something happened to Maddie earlier in the week. And the only thing, as he mentioned there in that video clip, that they cannot explain the fact of how she was seen during the week in the CRECHE. My research over 16 years, finally, just a few years ago, I think in 2017, it suddenly hit me how they did it. And it's important for me to get that information to him. And I have sent it to the PJ, but of course, you don't get anything back from the PJ. So Peter Mack, who he's an ex-superintendent in the police, he's helping me, and we're hoping that we can get that information to Gonçalo. And the reason I want to make it clear is my research is not so much about me and what I've done. It's about the credibility that I've tried to gain over the years and put everything into it. I didn't want accolades. I just want people to recognize that what I do, I really totally believe in. And in this particular case, I absolutely believe that I have a good idea of what likely happened and how they managed to achieve it. So let me think. I do want to dedicate this to Chris. I always dedicate it because I was at one point going to stop doing lives, and Chris was pretty sick, but wanted to watch me doing lives. I don't know why, but and I decided, yes, okay, I'm going to do it for him. And the very great thing, I got lovely email from them, and they predicted and hoped that my research would be finally recognized. And if it wasn't for Chris, I probably wouldn't be here now. So rest in peace, Chris. Now, I don't know if there's anything else I should acknowledge first, Shirley, before I start. Do you think? Is there anything? I welcome everybody. I can't see the chat. So if there's anything that is to be seen, then Shirley is here. She is so great. And she will put it up for me. Yep. Whether I watch it. It's sometimes I get so focused that it's difficult for me to think of something else. Otherwise, I lose track. So I really try to keep focused. Yeah, Gonçalo. Actually, I haven't got the picture now, but it was on the thumbnail. And it was what inspired me was that he's we need to prove him correct. He's not going to give up attempting to make it clear that his belief is that the parents were involved. And I want to help him to be able to prove that. His concern was, as he said, they can't explain the CRECHE deceit, but I believe I know exactly what happened. And maybe I should tell you basically what I believe happened before I go into the details to, I think, explain to you how I come across this. I didn't just grab it out of thin air. I haven't been 16 years just adding my two penneth because it's my opinion. I've really studied. And what I came up with 2017, I had a light bulb moment. And I was in Complete Mystery of Madeline McCann. And I was, well, maybe first of all, I'll show you, I'd created a CRECHE graphic. And you can see here that I took all the basic ins and outs and all the details about that time at the CRECHE. And while I was posting on Complete Mystery of Madeline McCann, it suddenly occurred to me how they achieved it. Unbelievable. It came to me in just while I was doing this post, which you can't read. It doesn't really matter. It's just that I saved it because it was such an important moment for me to realize the way the CRECHE deceit was attempted. Now, I think most of you know that I believe something happened to Maddie earlier in the week, and that has been since day one. And not day one, I'm sorry. I think I've posted about it, February of 2008 is when I first started realizing. But There was one thing I found odd about the CRECHE deceit, or the CRECHE, is, and this is from 2010, is that there was something that happened where there was one child in and one child out. Between Russell O'Brien's daughter, who looks very similar to Maddie, one of them would get booked in and the other one would get booked out. And I couldn't understand. I knew there was something. And this was back in 2010 that first came to me. And you can see from this picture that this is Russell O'Brien's daughter, and this is Maddie. This is Jez Wilkins' daughter. And you can see in a creche full of children that the three of them could be very similar. And that's why I think the CRECHE deceit actually worked. And how I think they achieved it, I'll go over it a little bit later, but how I think they achieved it was quite simple and actually very cunning. I recognized on that graphic that I made that very often they, let's say Russell and Jerry, it might have been Kate or whatever, but Russell and Jerry always often seem to appear at the CRECHE at the same time, even though they had different activities during the day. For some reason, they managed to appear at the CRECHE at the same time. And it was while I was going through that graphic and seeing this that I realized that very likely what was happening was that because Russell O'Brien's daughter looked so similar to Maddie, keeping in mind there's one child in and one child out. They didn't book both in and both out. There was only one went in and one came out. Well, came out. What I believe happened is so simple that if, let's say the book was outside, I don't know where they kept the register, but let's say they arrived. They sent Ella, Russell O'Brien's daughter, in, and Jerry walked in with her. And he said, "Hi, everybody. Hi, nannies. Hello." He knew what was happening. He wanted them to think that the girl that he entered with, which was Russell O'Brien's daughter, he wanted them to think it was Maddie. And I think that's really what happened. It may seem odd, but if you look at the CRECHE records, you can see how there's, for most days, they appeared at the same time. But there was one particular instance that really made me feel that I was correct. On the Wednesday morning, there was rain. It was raining, and so there was no tennis. Now, they dropped the twins off at the Ocean Club at, I think, a little bit earlier than usual. And rather than 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes to get to Maddie's kids club, it took something like 20 minutes before they arrived. And I thought, well, that's really odd, because they usually drop the twins off and then drop Maddie off and then they're free. But then I remembered something. I remembered that Diane Webster had made a comment, one comment in the whole files. She had mentioned that Kate and Jerry were at breakfast at the Millennium on the Wednesday morning. Now, as we are told, they never went to breakfast. She never mentioned that they actually sat and ate breakfast, just that they were there. And then it occurred to me that what may have happened, they dropped the twins off, they walked over to the Millennium, picked up Russell O'Brien, who in turn walked with them because they both arrived exactly the same time at the kids' club. Ella was taken in, and Jerry followed. And subsequently, when the nannies were interviewed the following week, they were, yeah, we saw Jerry. We saw Jerry. He came in with Maddie. He was there. Yeah, it was Maddie was there. When in actual fact, it was very likely Russell O'Brien's daughter that they saw. And you can see, I'm hoping you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes I'm here and I know the big picture, and I sometimes don't always explain it enough. So I do hope that you can understand. And does it make sense? Does it make sense, Shirley? She has to unmute. Usually takes
Yep,
a
I do. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, because I can't see the chat. So the point of this is that I would like for Gonçalo Amaral to be able to understand this, and he has taken on board the fact that something may have happened earlier. He recognizes that the pool picture may have been taken on the Sunday, but as he said in this video, I'm going to play it again for those that didn't see it. It's very important because he mentions that Peter has told him about the picture. The photo was likely taken on the Sunday. The weather patterns, everything else. It's so involved. Peter is obviously a great researcher, and Gonçalo was recognizing that maybe he was right. But as he mentions, and you can see in this clip, he also wrote it in his book, that how do they explain the crash? How do they explain people seeing Maddie at the crash? And
there's a question on the screen for you, Lizzie.
Pardon?
There's a question on the screen for you.
It's sad to use the word in on it. I think they all knew, and I'm going to go over what I would like to do, if you can bear with me after I've shown you this, because it's so important for me that my research is given the credibility that I believe in myself, obviously, that I just want to give you a little history of how I got to my research and how I got to the thoughts that I have. And if I can do that. And Matt, oh, good to see you. It's good to see everybody here, although I can't see you. I wish I could. I can't see any chat. So we were a little bit computer challenged, which is why I was late, and nothing was working. My internet went down. Nothing was working. But you know what? We're here now. So I'm going to play that clip again so you can see exactly what he says. When I find it. And I'm sure most of you realize that if Gonçalo does realize that there was very possibly something happened to Maddie earlier in the week, and that the CRECHE deceit is explained, this could be quite something major. So anyway, I'll just put this on for you, and then we'll go back to explain why I believe in my research and what I have actually done, not for accolades, just purely because of credibility. So
Mas eu tinha outra questão para lhe pôr, que era esta. Polícia bastante conhecido, formado, inglês, que se chama Peter, defende que a Madeleine McCann terá desaparecido a 29 de abril, ou seja, uma semana antes da data oficial do seu desaparecimento. Quer comentar?
É possível, é possível. Eu, neste novo livro, falo nessa hipótese, abordo essa hipótese. Não é só ele era superintendente da polícia britânica. São outras pessoas, advogados e outras pessoas, não é um bando de lunáticos. Eles pegaram em termos do estado do tempo daquela altura, com análise de satélite do estado do tempo, e dizem que aquela fotografia que os pais dizem que a família, o staff lá dos pais desta criança, dizem que foi efetuada no domingo na piscina, onde está o pai ao lado, que não é possível porque naquele dia o tempo não estava daquela forma. E, portanto, que para eles aquilo só aparece para provar ou tentar induzir em erro e dizer que a criança está viva naquela altura. Esta teoria tem algumas dificuldades de se comprovar, nomeadamente por causa do registro do infantário, nomeadamente daquele dia 3 mas depois já se vai saber mais tarde que é uma funcionária do infantário que será familiar, amiga de um familiar do padrinho ou da criança desaparecida.
Mas eu lembro-me da folha do registro do infantário estar rasurada.
Sim,
eu me lembro.
Sim.
So I hope you were able to read that and understand that he's saying, Maddie, something could have happened to Maddie earlier in the week, but they couldn't explain how she was seen at the creche. The creche register tells them she was there. And I think my research has hopefully could be valid. And I'm not sure if any of you out there are aware of it. I have spoken about it before, and whether or not you question it. And certainly if anybody questions it, I have to say that in 16 years, I've never come across anything to contradict my belief that something happened earlier. And for those of you that don't realize about what may have happened to Maddie, as I say, I just want to go back and explain to you how I got involved with this and what led me to finally be here today. Okay, hi Rabid. That's one of the most unnerving aspects of this case. If something other than a kidnapping took place, then others amongst the Tapa 7 must have guilty knowledge. There's no way around that. And ultimately, I would say they all knew except Diane Webster. I don't think Diane knew. I think she was kept out of it. But I just want to go through a few things and then explain to you why I believe that something happened to her early in the week. I don't know when she died. I've never claimed that she died earlier in the week. I don't know any of that. There is nothing in the files to give me that indication. So I've never looked into when or where or how or why. I've never looked at that because there's nothing in the files to tell us that. But anyway, basically, when I started, I was running an expat group. And this was back in 2007. And the Maddie issue came up and several people came to me and says, what's your opinion? And I still have the post that I made. I first of all asked if Kate was crying, which they told me she had tears. Sorry. They told me she hadn't. That's the first thing I asked. And I said, well, I really can't give an answer until, or an opinion until I know some of the facts. So I came over to the Maddie community. And the rest is history. I started looking at the facts back then, and I'm still looking. So that's what got me over here. I initially was in there was a few forums. We had the Daily Mirror forum. There was another one I wasn't part of, and the 3As, that was another great forum, and lots of blogs. And then we had, before the files were released, we did have the Sol article. Sol is a Portuguese newspaper, but to be honest, there's that thing, to be honest. I should stop saying that. They were so close. They knew that everything they put in there. Basically, when the files came out, we knew everything that was, not everything, but a lot of what was in the files, because it was in the newspaper. And that's when we put things together. But by the time the files were released, once they were released, I immediately opened another forum. It was a reference forum. Ended up having thousands of posts, all reference, no discussion, just thousands of posts. Because what I was finding, I'd already opened an MSN group. So I had that. Because what I was finding when I posted on any of the forums, I was repeating myself, or it was difficult to collate all the information together. So I had the, whichever forum it was, I started looking and saving and comparing all the files and the statements. And the first ones we had were the Ocean Club staff. So I took them, and what I did was compared them as to what one said to the other. And yeah, there was a lot. Like I say, I had thousands of posts that I put forward. And as the files came through, and thankfully, the Maddie case files admin spent, well, 4 years later, Inez was still translating the files. There was 40,000 files, and they were translated individually every day. And voluntarily. And this is why we have an unwritten rule in the Maddie case community that none of us make money from it. It's really important to us that not only do we want to make money from poor little Maddie, but when so many people put their heart and soul into translating the files for us so that we can discuss and use them, how dare we make money from that? That's why it's an unwritten rule. We just don't. So I've sometimes been questioned as to whether or not I've made money from the case. Anybody that knows me knows I haven't, and hence you can tell when my computer doesn't work that obviously I don't make any. But this, I've had to use this to prove to some people that no, I do not, and I don't want money. I would never take it. I think something popped up the other day, and on one of my channels, my Heidi Ho 4 YouTube channels, apparently I could have made 29,000. But you know what? I'm happy not to have made anything. And this should tell you right here, there is nothing. I've had 15,000 subs. But then back then, what I was doing was in 2011, 2012, and I was using all my information from the files that I had researched for 4 years. So between 2007 and 2011, I went in depth into all the files, all the statements, particularly of the tapas group, but also obviously with guests and everything else. And I separated them. And then I was able to use all the information that I'd learnt, because what happened was there was discrepancies that immediately showed up. And I'm not talking about, oh, well, was it Tuesday or was it Wednesday? I'm talking about when one of the friends, let's say on Thursday morning, one of the friends said, yeah, nobody was there for breakfast that morning. And the other one said, everybody was there, or something similar. You know, they were hiding stuff, but I'll get into that in a minute. So as you can see, I'm very proud, not only for me, everybody. Isabel McFadden, she had the opportunity, many of us had the opportunity of making money, but we wouldn't. And in fact, to this day, I have a Facebook group, Heidi Ho Controversy of Madeleine McCann, and Cherry, bless her heart, she is so good. If you want any information, go to Heidi Ho Controversy of Madeleine McCann, and either Cherry or Carrie, and I think Carrie's in chat. Well, she said she was going to be. She said she might be a bit late, but she was going to bring a note, so that's okay.
She's there. She's there.
She is. Did she bring a note, Shirley?
I haven't verified that yet. But she's in there.
Yeah.
She has been putting links in, so
that's I tell you, Carrie and Cherry. There's also Helen and Linda, and Steph has helped out, and it's I mean, they've been my admin for, we keep forgetting, I think it's about 9 years, and they are so great. But in fact, Cherry, when I do lives, if I hit on a topic, she'll go into the group and she'll bump up that topic. So you can see it's a public group. So, I mean, you don't need to become a member to see it. So you see how I go off on a tangent and then I forget where I'm at. So, yeah, basically it was, I created the videos from 2011 to 2012 mainly. I did some more afterwards and they were really successful. I think we've got 1.5 million views just on Gonçalo Amaral's band video, the documentary. And for anybody that wants to understand the files, he tells the story. So I've got to the point where I'd done all the research, put it into videos, and then I was asked to take over a Facebook group, because Facebook wasn't prior to that. We didn't get our Facebook group till I think I became admin in January of 2013 or just before. And that's where Cherry, well, I don't think Cherry and Carrie were there initially, but that's where we have everything listed there. You only have to search for a topic and I'm sure you'll find one. And subsequently, I think that's where I'm at as far as the history goes. Now, one of the main things that I absolutely believed from, I think, February, March of 2008 was that something happened to Maddie earlier in the week. Now, initially, I thought it was the Wednesday. I thought, okay, it can't have been Tuesday, because I started to go back through the witness statements. Now, jumping ahead a few years, of course, I did a graphic of the witness statements. Everybody who gave a statement as to seeing Maddie, supposedly, I don't know, 29. There may have been a few more, but basically that's everybody. And not one, well, one actually, only one gives a statement about seeing Maddie that is credible and believable. And that is Fatima, their cleaner's daughter. Now, these are some of the nannies. This is an example of what I say, that they say they saw them, but how credible were they? That actually was Maddie for a brief moment, no direct contact, formal and short, no contact. Saw once, didn't know her, mistaken, saw once. And that's when you can see that it's very possible that they were mistaken. Now, I think the easiest thing I can do here is just run a short little video which explains most of what I want to tell you about whether or not why I believe that something happened earlier. So if you can bear with me. And hopefully you're understanding everything I say. Please, if there's something you do want to ask, then could you keep a note of it and ask me at the end? I most certainly will answer anybody that wants to, that doesn't understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to keep focused.
Show. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Oh, I hear her voice as a cold winds blow in the sweet music on my radio. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
But in terms of personality trait, she's more like my side of the family, I think. She's very outgoing. She was a bit of a ringleader in the nursery and other friends, and it's always, it's bizarre because every time I was going to nursery, I'd say, oh, you Madeline? Stones was always talking about Madeline, and it was all the parents like, you know, you start thinking, oh my goodness, what has she been doing? But, you know, she's just really outgoing, good fun, bundles of energy, and very loving.
Within my heart. her and reaching out to me. Only she can set me free. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Why, oh, why did she have to leave and go away? Oh, yeah. Oh, I've been used to having someone to lean on, and I'm lost. Baby, I'm lost. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Have you seen her?
As another day comes to an end, I'm looking for a letter or something, anything that she would send. With all the people I know, I'm still a lonely man. You know, it's funny. I thought I had her in the palm of my hand. Oh, yeah. Have you seen her? Have you seen her?
Now, does that explain so much more and validate what I was trying to say about Russell O'Brien putting his daughter in and Jerry going in with her? How else do you explain that everybody was saying about how extroverted Maddie was, and yet only the Ocean Club staff explain her as being shy and timid? In fact, Cecilia claims that she was hanging on her daddy's leg. How weird that Russell O'Brien claims that she always used to hang on to his leg. So Cecilia was under the impression that the daughter, the girl that she saw, was Maddie. We do know that she can be mistaken, because on the Thursday evening, they all went to the Paraiso restaurant down by the beach, and Miguel Matias, the owner, claimed that he saw Maddie dancing with her father, and he didn't only say it once, he assured everybody, he assured them that this was Maddie dancing with her father. And we know from CCTV footage that no, it wasn't Maddie. It was Russell O'Brien's daughter. And it just explains that how easy it is to mistake the two of them. And as I've always said, in all the years I've been researching this, I have never come across once having anything contradict what I believe happened. When I first started putting the statements together, and then I'd take them and I'd take the times, anything to do with the timeline, I took them out of everybody's statements and put them into tables, even of 15-minute intervals, to compare what everybody said at the same time, the same 15 minutes or so. And it's only then I realized that discrepancies started happening. And what I saw was that Tuesday morning, some major discrepancies were happening. Nothing that could be explained from memory, just definite discrepancies, particularly at Maddie's so-called, well, I won't say Maddie because I don't believe she was there, but at the Lobsters mini tennis, I've done a video which just questions everything about that. Rachel saying that Kate took the picture of Maddie with the tennis balls. Jane saying it was her. I can't remember exactly which one, but so many discrepancies. And the reality of the kids club mini tennis is they're little 3 and 4 year olds. They weren't going to play tennis as such. They were going along there with a bat and a ball and or racket and ball. Don't know if they may have been, little sponge ones or anything. It wasn't a tennis game. But I think it was Rachel. Now, Rachel was one that very often used to put her foot in it. And in this particular instance, I think it was Rachel that said that Jerry joined them. Well, hang on. Jerry couldn't have joined them because at the same time the mini tennis was going on, it was Jerry's tennis lesson as well. And the police must have cottoned onto it because they did go to Rachel and asked her, I just have to add something here because Rachel seems to think that Maddie played on the Thursday. She said the last time she saw Maddie was on the Thursday, which is odd because that was the Sharks were playing on the Thursday. The Lobsters, which Maddie was in, Maddie's group, was on Tuesday. So if she said the last time she saw Maddie was when she was playing tennis, that would have been Tuesday. But she said, no, it was Thursday. And the police questioned her on that, even to the point of asking her which court they were playing on, because I think they knew that she was maybe making up little porkies because very possibly she was trying to be helpful. And she saw the Sharks playing and thought, okay, that was probably Maddie's group. I'll say that I saw them on Thursday. I saw her on Thursday. That was the last time I saw her. Funnily enough, they played in the morning, and this is where it comes into question. And this is another major issue regarding the last photo, because at lunchtime, apparently, Jane and Rachel were playing tennis. And Jane was telling us that Maddie was yelling through the fence and the McCanns were there. This would be at the time of the last photo. But funnily enough, Rachel didn't see Maddie and is telling us that the last time she saw her was earlier that morning. So that does bring into question something very important. Was Rachel and Jane playing tennis at that time? Were the McCanns at the pool? Was Maddie there? Was anybody there? Or was it a made-up statement from them to place Maddie at the pool on Thursday when the so-called last picture was taken? When now we know from Peter Mac that the weather that day was not the sunny weather that we can see in the last photo, and he has approached Gonçalo Amaral with that, and I believe, and this is what is great. I have come to the conclusion throughout my research that something happened to Maddie earlier, and Peter Mac and Tony Bennett and others have also come to that same conclusion, and we've all reached it in different ways. Now that has to tell you something. It really does. It kind of confirms something. There were discrepancies throughout the week. As I say, they started Tuesday morning. There's so many. I've done videos and graphics of each of them. But that's when I realized that, okay, if Fatima, the cleaner's daughter, who claims she saw her on Sunday lunchtime, she described what she was wearing. She described the fact that they were carrying plates and things up to the Payne's apartment on the first floor or second floor, depending on what country you're from. And it was credible. She saw the little lights on their shoes. It was very credible, but that's the only statement that is credible. Not credible. The others believed that they saw Maddie. What I'm saying is hers was more proof. She saw all the family coming out of their room and that. So at that point, I believe that something happened to Maddie on the Tuesday, before the Tuesday. So after the Sunday, when Fatima saw her, and then Tuesday morning, some major discrepancies started. And that's when I believed, in between those times, something happened to Maddie. What confirms that in some respect is that on Wednesday morning, if you consider there's lots of discrepancies from Tuesday right through, but on the Wednesday morning, Jerry received some text messages, and these were very important to the Portuguese police. And they were so important, these text messages, which he denied. They were so important that prior to the files being released the following August, they approached the Supreme Court. I'm not sure if it said Supreme Court. I'm not sure of exactly, but it was certainly a high court to try and get them released into the files. But they were turned down by Judge Cardoso, and they did know what was on those text messages. They were aware. They just couldn't get them released. So this happened 8 o'clock Wednesday morning is when Jerry first started receiving these. Now, if there was nothing, why were they questioning something on Wednesday? Well, if it was a normal holiday up until Thursday evening when she supposedly disappeared, why were they questioning these text messages on the Wednesday? And I have only just recently found out that I knew that the text messages were known, or what the contents were known by the police. But what I didn't realize until just recently, thanks to Isabel McFadden, that they actually know who the text messages were from or to. And it was, he was looking for legal counsel. Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, legal counsel. Isabel has the name. Now, does that not tell you that something was happening? I think that that certainly should highlight. And it's quite amazing to think that these things were happening, and the discrepancies, some major discrepancies, but they weren't really known. I have them all, and I presumed that the Portuguese police were aware of everything that I had. I just put everything together. But what I didn't realize until now, that what I thought they knew about the CRECHE, apparently they didn't. So I have to wonder whether they know all the discrepancies that I found, major discrepancies. I mean, we're not just talking memory. And when I look at Gonçalo Amaral, he only had the knowledge until the October. He was taken off the case October the 2nd on his birthday. Not because he was incompetent by any stretch. He was in charge of the southern portion of Portugal. He wasn't just on the Maddie case. He was, I don't know offhand what the word was. He was the coordinator in the Maddie case, but he was in charge of the southern portion of Portugal. So, I mean, he had so many other cases. He was a great policeman. And he was asked to go back to Faro, which he did for a while. But then, because he wanted to release his book, he had to leave. There's so much involved in what he did. He is our hero. He is, and this is why he didn't know. How is he supposed to know? The derogatory interviews were done in the April, just before, a couple of months before the case was shelved. And the case had to be shelved because once there is an arguido, which would have at that time been Robert Murat, who was made arguido in May, I think in May. And they are given, Portuguese law requests that they're given 8 months to either charge that person or shelve the case. And they managed to get a couple of extensions, which took it through to July of the following year. And they were forced by Portuguese law to shelve the case at that point. The McCanns were declared arguidos. Now, I've never had it confirmed whether or not once the case was shelved, whether they still, when it was reopened, whether they still became arguidos again, because it was reopened a while later. But I've never been able to make that clear. But we do know one thing is absolutely for sure, confirmed by judges, that the McCanns have never been cleared of being involved. You hear this on the media all the time. Oh, they're cleared. They didn't. No. Judges have confirmed the McCanns are not cleared. And they're not suspects. But we also know that at one point they weren't suspects, and they're saying, no, we're not suspects. Next minute, they were suspects. So anything can happen. And when it comes to that, I'm often asked, do I think that the case will be solved? I don't know. I'm hoping that my new information for the Portuguese police and Gonçalo, I'm hoping that it will be taken into account and maybe be considered a very good possibility, and that it may open up other avenues for them to see some other things that happened earlier in the week that maybe they weren't aware of, and how this attached itself to the possibility that if they did have to dispose of Maddie in some form, that something dropped, that they would have had time. It answers so many questions. Something happening earlier answers so many questions as to how they got away with it. Kate wasn't necessarily seen at the tapas restaurant. She wasn't necessarily seen there on the Tuesday when the quiz mistress was there. She said there was an empty plate. On the Wednesday, I think Stephen Carpenter claimed that Jerry arrived at the restaurant with Russell, and Jerry told him that Kate was at home or back at the apartment settling the children. But that doesn't answer where Jane was. And when you think about it, why wouldn't Jane and Russell and Jerry go along together and Kate pop along later? But I believe that Kate at that point was grieving. I mean, she had to grieve, regardless of whatever this is about. A lot of what you see is her actual grief of her daughter, passing. So you may think, oh yeah, it was really real, she's gone, and look at how. I think a lot was because she knew that Maddie had passed. I mean, there's so many things that we could. The one thing that actually I haven't addressed too much lately is about the diary. I believe she wrote that diary to be found, because if she knew that Maddie was dead, how was this diary written? If you understand, you can't write a diary pretending your daughter's still alive when you know she's dead. So there's so many questions to answer. I just don't know. But basically, because of the discrepancies starting Tuesday is why I believed that something happened earlier. I then went on to look for, was there a day? Was there a day that could be the day that I believe something happened? As I say, I won't say she died, because that wasn't necessarily the case. Something could have happened beforehand. Maybe she didn't die until the Thursday. I don't know. But that's when I decided to go through all the statements. I came up with absolutely nothing. Not one statement that told me she was seen. And not believable. I mean, it could mean she was seen, but there was nothing to prove it. I looked at the CRECHE records, and if you think about it, I mean, if you look at this, she went to, supposedly was at the CRECHE, and they did these activities. And where are they? Surely they would have come up with that. It's just not. It's not just. There was nothing except discrepancies right through till the Thursday, and I've listed everything by the hour. By the 15 minutes, you can go to any table and it will tell you what all of them were doing within that 15-minute or hour period, and what they were saying, and the differences between the contradictions between them. Now, would that really have happened had it been a normal holiday? They might have forgotten the day. There are so many things that point to something happening earlier. And it wasn't. That's why I felt I should make sure that everybody understands the degree of research that I did and still do. I mean, I'm still kind of working on things, maybe not as much, but there is no question. Nothing has ever contradicted. I think there was one little thing with Mrs. Fenn that I couldn't quite explain. But when you think, in 16 years, nothing has ever contradicted anything of what I have discovered or the conclusions I've come to. As I say, I don't know. I never claimed she died any specific time, or why, or how, or when. It's not in the files. So I try to only deal with the facts, which includes, of course, interviews and things like that. But that, as I say, after realizing that something happened to Maddie earlier, is when I realized that it's important for me. It's my responsibility. If I'm going to say that, it's my responsibility to explain how they got, how they managed to achieve her going to the crash. And that's exactly where you've probably heard, anybody who knows me has probably heard me in every other live saying, I spent 2 days on that CRECHE graphic and thought, oh, okay. But ultimately, when I studied it and when I looked at it, I realized this is likely what happened. I realized that those 2 days were priceless. And it's brought me to this point that I have justified myself by saying that something happened to her earlier and explained the crash. So that was important to me, because how could I say something happened earlier but not be able to explain the crash? I mean, it's part of what you have to do. So that's why after 10 years, I finally came to the conclusion that judging and taking note from the graphic, easier to see. I mean, the CRECHE records were just so difficult. I mean, this is an example of the Thursday graphic, Thursday registration form. I mean, they were so hard to understand, and there was hundreds and thousands of posts about the CRECHE records. But then when I put them into order here, and then I started to see, I can't read it right now, but okay, the diary, okay. These I've got 2 videos with all the graphics on them, one relating to about her, something happening earlier, and another one relates to all the graphics involving the crash. So I will try and remember. Shirley, do you think you can remind me to put those links to those 2 in the description afterwards?
Okay.
But it's anything you want. If you go to Heidi Ho Controversy Facebook group and just ask Cherry or anybody in there if there's something you want to see, or if you want a link. This is what we mostly do in that group is we stand back. Well, I say unfortunately, I've been pretty much missing in action for a little while, but Cherry has done a wonderful job, and Carrie is right there behind her. You only have to ask, and Carrie and Cherry will give you a link. They will find a link that nobody else can find. I'm also in the What Really Happened to Madeleine McCann Facebook group. Wonderful group. Really, really busy and great group. Very active with discussions, and maybe there's a few people from in there here today. And you only have to ask, and we have it. And if Cherry and Carrie don't have it, I have it. I've got, I think, 8 TB hard drives, which is quite a bit. We've got lots of stuff. So if there's anything you want to know, please, please ask. And if you dispute what I say, please question me, because that is so important to me. What I am happy to be second guessed, because that only helps me. I only want the truth. I don't need to be right. I just want the truth. And if I have to second guess myself, I used to love, there was a chap in Maddie Case Files, I think, Snowy, and he or she was always questioning me, and I loved it, because once you're questioned, then you second guess, and then you decide, yeah, maybe I'm not right, or yeah, I'm right. So it's so important. And I don't want anybody to absolutely believe me blindly. That's important to me also. Just because I say something, just don't go blindly believing me and say, well, Lizzie said this. If it's that important, just double check it. Double check a link. Make sure that what I've said is wrong. Because I work from memory mostly, as you can tell, because I couldn't read anything, even if it was in front of me. And I suspect that I might make the odd error. Hopefully not. But if I do, question me and I will absolutely correct it. So I think I should conclude that portion. Do you think, Shirley, have I covered everything? I mean, the Maddie case is so big.
It is.
There is so much.
I think for the purpose of what you wanted to do today, you did good. There were a couple questions. I'm going to go.
Yes, and one was about the diary.
Yeah, that was the last one. I got to go while you talk about the. Carrie put the link in the chat for the diary.
Okay, well, I can't see the chat.
Yeah, so I'm trying to pull up the questions that some people had asked.
Okay, I'll answer the diary one. And this is one which takes a little bit, you have to think a little bit on this one, because Kate supposedly wrote a diary. I think it was suggested to her that she write this diary, and it got in the hands of the Portuguese press via the police, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, they put up a few little extracts from it. And then we find out they got £10,000 hush money for this diary. I don't have the graphic right now, but yeah, they received 10,000 hush money to keep it quiet regarding the diary. Now, when you stop and think about it, and this is what you have to think, well, I have to think anyway, is your daughter has died. You know she's dead, but you've got to try and pretend she's alive. So you write a diary to her. You get 10,000 for it. And then how do you explain to people that ultimately will realize this is, see, it gets a bit weird. Some people like us know that if Maddie died, that diary was fake. It's just wrong. The diary is fake. If she knew, she wrote that diary, if she knew, well, she did know that Maddie died, and yet she wrote a diary. And I think what I was trying to say was she wanted it to be seen. She wanted people to see it, because why else would she write a diary? Knowing her daughter had died, this was a fake diary. This was to con people into believing that she believed Maddie hadn't died, but she knew she had, if you understand me. It was a con. Definitely a con, and they received a lot of money for it. And it was they received 10,000 hush money, and then the next time it was scrubbed. I've got a graphic where it shows they received that hush money and then it was changed. So that was, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to know about that diary, but certainly she, even when it came to the Leveson inquiry, here she is, oh yeah, well, it hurt because my diary was put out and this and and knowing that she did it to be seen. She had to. Why else would you do a diary about your daughter that you knew was dead if you didn't want it to be seen? that's the whole point. She did it to make money, to make people believe that whatever. But in the Leveson inquiry, she was making all the journalists and everybody feel bad for her because, oh, I came out Sunday and it was, oh, sorry. Okay, done on that one. What was another one? I can't read.
You want me to read it?
Shailin Pilley. Hi, Lizzie. I'm a member of South Africa. Can you please elaborate from South Africa? Of South Africa. I haven't got my proper glasses on here. Can you please elaborate on David Payne's statement, as I believe he was more complicit than the other friends? Well, we're getting into deep water here. There are several occasions that he was questionable. I think the biggest one that we all know about, well, we don't all know about. I really don't know who's in here as to what everybody knows. So I'll just presume that you don't know anything. And for those that know it, you know, you can go along with it. But I think the biggest thing that I personally have tried to keep it low key in the group. I didn't want to, although it is a fact and we did kind of gloss over it, I really didn't focus too much on it. And that's the Gaspar statements, which many of you know that the friends that were with them in Mallorca the year before, there were two friends. I think they were both doctors. I know one of them may have been the Gaspars. And it wasn't until, I think, November when, out of the blue, suddenly their statements appeared from Leicester. The Leicester police had held on to these statements, and it appears that somebody, one of the cops or somebody in Leicester, had decided the Portuguese police really need to see these and stuffed it in between. Now, we always thought it was in between facts. I think Gonçalo at one point said, no, it wasn't facts or whatever. Doesn't matter. It appeared in between everything else. And these statements were extremely disturbing, really disturbing. They claim that when they were on holiday in Mallorca with David Payne and his wife and Jerry and Kate and maybe another couple, I don't know, along with the facts that they were each bathing the children. They claim that there was an interaction between Jerry and David Payne where they were making lewd comments and actions directed that seemed just bad. You can read about them in the Gaspar statements. If you go to my channel and just put in crime of the century, I think if you like Supertramp too, I think I've listed it under crime of the century, and it will show you the statements, and it's just creepy. So also we have Yvonne Martin, who was a social worker who appeared down at the next morning, and David Payne hustled her away. He seemed to take charge, but she recognized him. Now, she was a social worker, I think, is it Exeter? I can't remember. Was he in? I can't remember where he was. Anyway, no, it wouldn't have been Exeter. But she couldn't remember, or she claimed, whether it was on a business level or, he'd been included in whatever, if you know what I mean. So he was questionable. In fact, as I say, we didn't really focus on it too much. I tried to keep clear of it. But Gonçalo actually has made quite a few videos. I didn't translate. Let me know. I do not know Portuguese, except when I am adding the subtitles, I always hope that they put window in there, because I know window, so I know window goes right there. But anyway, I've done quite a few adding translations to videos, the subtitles. And he's done a few on David Payne and the questionable bathing of the children. And things like this were going on. And this is one thing about regarding Mrs. Fenn, is that her apartment was not only above the McCann's apartment, it was also above Rachel and Matthew's apartment, because they just had a little apartment next to, and hers went over the top. Now, when you're talking about a child that was crying for an hour and a quarter, could it have come from there? Now, Rachel, and not a lot of people realize, Rachel in her statements has claimed that she or they were bathing Russell O'Brien's daughter. Like, why would that be? I believe the children were being looked after. I believe that Gonçalo Amaral actually says that they didn't go around the front. I mean, the Paynes would have had to have gone around the front of the building, but he stood up when he visited Praia de Luz. He stood up on the balcony and said they did not enter through the back. They came through the back patio doors, and because they didn't lock, there would probably need to be people in, and that's how they did it. And that's why he said it rings hollow that Jane would have been walking up and seeing the child being carried, because she didn't go up to the front. They all went, I don't know, maybe cameras, I don't know. But David Payne definitely is questionable. I really don't want to go any further than that. I think you can all check. If you look on my channel, you can see a lot of the translated videos. A few of them are regarding the enigma, is what Gonçalo calls David Payne, the mystery man, and he is. In fact, he was supposed to have visited the apartment on the Thursday, just prior to them going to dinner. Kate says that he only visited for 30 seconds. He said he was there for a while. He went inside and saw all the kids all dressed in white and beautiful and all this, that, and the other. Yeah. David Payne is definitely a mystery in himself, and worthwhile checking if you, and anything you want to know, as I say, you can either ask me or Cherry and Carrie, or even Jane and some of the other admin in what really happened to Madeleine McCann. It's a private group, so it's very active in that group, and I try and answer a lot of questions in there, but I can't always.
There's another one up on the screen.
Yes, I'm trying to read it.
Okay, I can read it for you if you want.
That's okay. I think I've got it. Valerie Dobson. Lizzie, what do you think about the man CB they are trying to pin the disappearance of Maddie on? Goodness knows what else these people will get away with. I pray for the day we get justice for Maddie. Yeah. And that's, listen, there's one thing that I've always wanted. My reason for doing what I do is I want to get the information out to the UK public. That has been the main effort. That's for my videos, for the Facebook group. The public at large don't get on the computer and check Madeleine McCann and forums and this. They just see what it's in media. It's only when they actually do start to look at some of the details that we discuss that's why you're all here, because you actually did check it. But see, now I remind me, Shirley.
What do you think about what they're trying to say about the guy?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. I'll tell you one thing. Between CB and Christian Bruckner and that Maddie lookalike, or whoever thought she was Maddie, I don't even look. I know zero, because I know before anything it is a total whitewash. It is nothing. He wasn't there. He did not do it. There is no proof. I did listen to Mark. That's what you must do if you want to know anything about Christian Bruckner, not the latest stuff, but initially, if you listen to Mark Salnokonoko's podcast, is it still up? I think he interviewed Mr. What is his name? Mr. Wolf, not Mr. Wolfhard. Anyway, the prosecutor, the German prosecutor. By all accounts, he's just in it for the fame. From what I can make out, he knows nothing. He didn't know anything. He couldn't talk about anything because he didn't know it. And it's somebody mentioned that he's in it for the fame, and I think ultimately maybe he is. That may not answer your question, but then I'm not able to answer the question because I am not wasting my time. As soon as I saw that, I just do not listen, do not watch. I have spoken to somebody who has been in contact, and no, he's totally innocent. So anything to do with him is just a put on. Who's in aid of, who's benefiting from it? Who knows? I don't know. So I'm sorry I can't answer you on that anymore. Rabbit, isn't there some sorry, I really need to get me new specs. Isn't there some worrying activity with Jerry's phone data from prior to the event before being deleted? Well, I can only say I know about the text messages. I am not aware of just general activity during that week anyway. I am aware of something a little bit later, but during that week, I really don't know. We do know that they did delete their messages, but Kate didn't delete one, proving that Jerry had deleted it on his phone. So it shows that they consciously deleted their phone messages. And what I was going to say, I lost one of my forums. I've been trying to get it back. The very first AMU forum that I had, which I did all my research on initially. And sadly, it's disappeared, but they're trying to get it back for me. It's kind of there. I can get it sometimes on Wayback Machine. But one thing I was really upset about was I developed a calendar. I took every single day from May to September and put as much information on each day as I could, what they were wearing, the blog, Kate's diary, any news articles or anything that was happening, anything worthwhile, and the phone pings. I put it into this calendar, and I thought I'd lost it. But a week or two ago, I found it on Wayback Machine, just enough that I've got the May to September, and I've added it to our controversy AMU forum, which I have. Don't often refer to that, but it's there. And I can give a link for that. and you can go through each month. You can go through May and have a look, and you see where they claim to have eaten this, but their pings actually showed them as being somewhere else. It's very, very telling. It really tells a story. And the one thing which I believe in June, July, there was always something curious about the triangle. They visited down Sagres and other areas, and I discovered, and I'll just tell you very quickly, that there was very often nights, and this was around the time Jerry went to Washington, there was very often nights evenings when they would go and visit Buden's or over to the west just for an hour and then come back. And then when Jerry came back from Washington, he actually overshot PDL and went over to Buden's, I'm not sure which one. I believe there was something happening there. I think we all do, because of the questionable. We always knew the triangle. And as I haven't done it recently because I didn't have the calendar handy, but I went back on it, and it's quite involved. But if you really study, you can see that over June and July, they did visit, and the phone pings, sometimes one, sometimes both of them. And I think it was July 28th that the phone ping stopped. And that's when I believe they moved Maddie's body. They never went back there. And that's just before the dogs came in. So Jerry came back from Washington. They dealt with everything. And I think at that point they moved her body. I really do. And then the dogs came in, and we know what the dogs came up with. So I really don't know anymore. I just feel that because visiting there several nights and suddenly stopping tells me that may have been 28th of July, I think it is, the time when they actually did move things. So I'm sorry if I couldn't answer regarding the week they were there, if there was questionable calls, Rabbit, but that's all I can mention on that one. So Emily, dear Emily is lovely. She always pops along. She's always here. Nice to see you. Lizzie, what do you make of the people who went on holiday and said once home they saw someone matching Gray's description, carrying a kid that looked like Maddie to the beach? Oh, Jerry, sorry. You're talking about the Smiths. Okay. I've got myself in trouble more than once because, partly because I've always believed something happened earlier, but partly because I could not. I look at the scenario. How on earth could it all happen if within that 3/4 of an hour that they find Maddie, they take Maddie, they alert the others, they grieve, they all in that 3/4. I just couldn't see it. And not only that, we do know that blood was found in the apartment behind the couch. And if that's the case, Rachel discusses resuscitation. If that's the case and my daughter had died, I wouldn't be carrying her through the streets at that point openly. Certainly, I think the first thing anybody would do in that circumstance, if he wanted to take Maddie and take her down to the beach, the first thing you would do is wrap them in a blanket. I'm sorry. I absolutely believe the Smiths. I believe the Smiths saw something, may have seen Jerry, may have been a setup. I don't know. I do not dispute the Smith sighting whatsoever. I do dispute that it was Maddie that they were carrying, for several reasons. So I've never, and I've got into trouble for that, because even Gonçalo has put a lot of credence to it. I just can't. I really can't. So thank you, Emily. Hi, Rabbit again. Can you remind us what has been reported about how the McCanns acted in the immediate aftermath? There is no correct way to act after an event like this, but still, there were red flags. And yes, absolutely, there were red flags all over. Jerry laughing in the caught laughing in the apartment. But one thing is for sure that a lot of people don't really take into consideration, and that is that Maddie died. So of course they're going to be grieving. I believe that Kate had already not already grieved, but been grieving for a couple of days. And yeah. So when they look at the horror and everything that they were expressing, yeah, they'd be able to do it because their daughter had just died. The odd thing, I think one of the very odd things, was when Jerry went over to the reception and he was bowing down like a praying Arab. And then when the cops got into the apartment, the two of them, I believe, were resting on the bed, just going crazy. Like, it was very weird. And those cops did mention that there was no tears. I did study. That's one thing, and one thing I get really upset about. I might not be Portuguese, but boy, I stand behind the Portuguese police, because the effort that they went to that night, they raised the other cops out of their beds. They were there all night. One of the cops was there from the beginning. He went home for an hour in the morning and came back the next day. They were all off from, as I say, raised from their sleep. There was so many, I think there was about 13 policemen there by about 2:00 in the morning, as well as other cops, just the ones that we had the witness statements for. And they did a great job. They were there. Kate and Jerry are saying, no, they left us alone. No, they didn't. The cops saw Kate and Jerry walking through when they did that hour at 6:00 in the morning, where Kate was on her phone most of the time. I've got the phone things. Running through bushes. Yeah, right. Sorry. But no, the cops did an absolutely wonderful job. And I've got one video. How dare people question the Portuguese police? They did a superb job. Have I ever been, Chris, have I ever been asked to stop my page? How do I answer that? There's several people that don't like what I do. I don't know. I know that once my video started getting into the McCanns forum, or whatever it was, blog, but there was a big thing in there. No more Heidi Ho videos. So they don't like me. And although the McCanns have actually tried to approach Pamela, I think they approached Pamela. I mean, and of course, Tony Bennett. Look what they did to poor Tony. That was Tony, whether he was very controversial, maybe still is, but you cannot dispute that Tony, his effort was justice for Maddie. And he, even if you didn't like him, the fact is he was placed in a position where the McCanns tried to take him to court. They had the most feared lawyers in Britain after as their lawyers, Carter Ruck. And Tony just could not face up against them. He he faced financial ruin if he did. So this is what's actually interesting, and some of you may understand what I'm trying to say here, is that because he couldn't defend himself, he was given 6 key demands. They said, okay, what you have to do is you have to do this, 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 and this. One of them was that he must not talk about case regarding the dogs and how the McCanns may be complicit. And he had to agree to that, as it wasn't a settlement at the time. It wasn't money. It was just that he had to agree to not to do certain things. 6 key demands he had. One of them he violated by being on an Australian forum. They found out. They discovered him on an Australian forum and decided, okay, he broke the court's request of what he had to do, and he was in contempt of court. And poor Tony, because contempt of court is criminal, and they were trying to get him put in prison. I will never forget that night before. I did a video for him overnight, trying to get it to him before he left in the morning. Everybody, all of us were petrified. It was horrible. I was in tears doing the video because we really thought. So here was a man, whether you liked him or not, he had the courage of his convictions, and he stood up against the McCanns and against everybody. They had QCs there and everything, for what was right. You cannot dispute, apart from him being a great researcher, and I really like Tony, but he really put his personal life on the line for Maddie. And none of us, I mean, Gonçalo has done it himself, but I mean, as far as us members go, we haven't. So what I've discovered is the McCanns have difficulty suing anybody, I think, in Canada or the US. So fortunately, I haven't been privy to anything. I've noticed little things, but no, they've not. But anybody, yes, of course, everybody. I mean, dear Pamela, she always wants me to quit, but we just disagree. I respect her opinion. She believes they're innocent. I hope she respects mine. She tries to change my view. It's not going to. Do you think they would ever charge without a body? This is something which, as it stands, they can't charge anybody. At this point, or at the point that we know anyway, I mean, I don't know if things have changed. We wouldn't know anything of what's changed in the actual investigation. But there is nothing to say what charges could be filed. They don't know what happened, so they cannot charge anybody. As somebody said to me when they were trying to explain that they can't charge because they don't know what the crime is. And I do have a graphic on that. And she said to me, she said, like, they're going to turn around and say, well, we charge you with, well, not sure yet, don't know. You know, they can't. So nobody, from what I know prior, nobody could be charged. But I do recall hearing or seeing something where the only 2 things, the Portuguese police know everything. Well, they maybe don't know everything, but they know they're guilty. And I saw it that there's only 2 things. One is to find the body, and the other thing is for somebody to confess. They're the only 2 things. If nothing else, they can't charge them, because at this point, you know, they don't know what happened. Now, I have to say, And this is where I truly believe, Chris, please help me, that if it becomes knowledge that something did happen to her earlier, it would open up so many lines of investigation about things that could have happened earlier that might fall into place. Maybe. I don't know. I really hope it helps. Never going to solve the case. You know, that's one thing. I mean, none of us are going to solve the case. And none of us have read all the files. Don't you just die laughing when you hear people say, oh, yeah, I've read all the files. No, you haven't. 40,000 pages. And you don't just read a file. You read that file and you compare it with others. And you... No, anyway. Sorry, that's me going on. Sorry, Suzanne, I'm doing a Suzanne. Lizzie, can you talk about Shailin Pillay? Can you talk about the freezer and the facts around the body being kept in a freezer at the same complex? Wasn't necessarily at the same complex. We do believe, Gonçalo does believe that the body was put into a freezer. He did mention about an apartment close to where they were. And this apartment was questionable because they were seen going into it. This also had an issue about some chap that fell in the street, and I think they were helping him back in. It was around the same time that Jerry's wallet was stolen. I mean, there's so many little different stories. But Gonçalo does believe that she was put in a freezer, sadly. And because it showed the body fluids that leaked down through and over to the wheel. We did have one of my admin who had the same car and tried to work that out, see whether or not that could happen from the side thing, but that's another story. But yeah, that she was basically kept in a freezer, and Gonçalo recognizes that. I don't believe that we have the forensics on that. We only get the forensics on the blood that was found in the back of the car and in the apartment, but we don't have the forensics on the body fluid that leaked down to the curb over the wheel. So I'm wondering whether I should wrap up now. I've only just looked at the time. I had no idea of the time. No idea of what anybody said, except for what you've helped me with, Shirley. And I think I've covered most things, I hope.
Yeah, I think I got most of the questions from the chat put up there. Again, Carrie's been putting links in and directing people to a lot of the information that you've been talking about. So
that's great. I am so lucky. I'm so lucky to have you, Shirley. Shirley volunteers whenever she can, and I just love it because she's right there. She's got. I was going to say you got your best dress on, but you haven't got a dress on right now.
No, I don't.
Got your best haircut going.
With little toddler grimy hands around me a lot, I don't wear a lot of nice clothes anymore.
Oh, and I got to see him before we started, so that was
yes.
So, well, hopefully I've covered most things. Certainly, if there's anything you want to ask me, I have a post up in our controversy group, as well as what really happened to Madeleine McCann group, and also in our No Hate group. So if there are questions that you want to ask me, then please do. I haven't done the Maddie case for a while. In fact, I haven't done too many for a while. And this was part of the reason I needed to do today, because I wasn't sure that my computer would take it. and it obviously didn't to start off with. I was pressing start and nothing happened for about 10 seconds, so it really wasn't working out. Oh, the KTP. I hadn't realized there was a live stream. Managed to catch the last 30 minutes. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And are there any mods? I haven't even checked.
Yeah, Carrie and Suzanne.
Oh, Suzanne. Oh, of course, I've already acknowledged Suzanne because I was telling her previously that I was probably going to ramble, and she told me not to worry. So thank you, Suzanne. Always listen to Suzanne. She always tells me what to do. And Carrie is, do you know what? I have to say this. It's nothing to do with this, but Carrie is so good that if I'm chatting to somebody in our private chat and I've asked them a question and they haven't answered, all of a sudden Carrie will appear with the link.
Yep.
She's right there. And I'm like, I asked a question of Mike, actually. And the next thing, Carrie's got the answer.
Yep. She's the link queen for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So Rabbit said, well, that's me back down the rabbit hole.
Oh,
Emily says, don't wait too long to do another live.
You know what? I'm not going to. I've hesitated doing it because of my equipment, which I managed to find my cables, so it's directly connected, but we haven't got the top quality internet here. I'm out a bit in the boonies, and we don't have many options. And once our 450 gigabytes or megabits or whatever has gone, we're lowered right down, and there's no other option. You can't get extra. This is the thing here. So it's always questionable, but we are at the beginning of the month, so we do have our megabits or whatever it is, gigabytes. And I thought, let's give it a shot, because I do hope to do. I haven't answered Sonia. She's invited me onto a show and asked me to let me know what time. She has a breakfast show. It's 7:30 in the morning, so it would be like 2:30 my time. But I didn't want to answer until I knew whether or not my computer could handle it. I think we haven't had too much after a reboot. We didn't have too much happening here, right?
Nope, it's been fine. So now you know. You just need to reboot right before you get ready to start.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I hesitate rebooting because this one doesn't boot right up. You have to do a load of things and hope, pray that it starts. So that's why I kind of hesitated. I thought, yeah, okay, never mind. And finally, I think my hair is dry.
Okay.
It was a decision. Do I try and fix the computer or do I dry my hair? So had to fix the computer.
Good choice, because like I told you, no one can tell your hair was wet. It didn't look wet. It looked fine.
Okay. Well, whatever. So Shirley, thank you so much. Thank you so much for helping me. You were right here for me. Everybody. I'm sure Susie's out there somewhere, even if she hasn't made herself known. I see, this is it. Without chat, I don't know. And Mike somewhere, maybe Mike somewhere in the distance, and the other Shirley and Sandra and all the rest, and Helen and oh golly, too many.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I should get going. I will be doing more lives. I'm really excited about this, though. what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
to interrupt you really quick. So a couple people put it in chat, but I'm going to say it on the panel too. Please hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down. They actually both help with the algorithm. So to kind of get the word out about this and the updates and the stuff that's coming, that's exciting for Lizzie. Please do that.
Thank you, Shirley. I never think of thumbs up and subs and all things like that. That was
No,
never
I
an
know
issue.
you don't. I know you don't.
But it's nice. I'll give a thumbs up. I will finish by remembering Chris again. You know, I mean, Chris was so important to me every live we've done because him and his wife absolutely believed in me to the point that they said one day in their email they were saying that they had goosebumps at when they realized what I'd come up with, and that one day I would have a phone call or somebody knock on my door. And they absolutely believed me to that point. And you know what? What I've explained to you today could be that point that, you know, Chris was on about. So important. So important. It could, if Gonçalo Amaral decides that my research is valid, and hopefully from what I've been saying, if he probably won't listen, but if he does consider it, that would be major. If he was to come out and say that, yeah, I believe something happened and we do have an explanation, who knows where that could go? And who knows, as I say, what avenues that would open up for the Portuguese police to look back and say, well, wow, yeah, if it did happen earlier, even as far as Monday or Tuesday, then this is why that happened. And that, you know, you never know. I'm not saying I've changed the case, but I think it's important that Gonçalo Amaral is given credibility for his beliefs, which are to look at the parents as being accountable. So, Carrie, thank you everyone for being with us tonight and joining in the discussion. I hope you have a good evening and rest of the week. Oh, she's doing her bit for me. That's supposed to be my bit, and I haven't done that. Thanks, Carrie. You are great. So, is that it then, Shirley? Is there anything else I should do? See, I need Shirley because she helps.
That's it. You just need to put those links in the description when we're done. That's it.
I don't have them handy. I'll have to do it tomorrow.
You have to get it from Carrie. Carrie has them.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I won't go there. I think I showed, there was one case last year where I responded to somebody, a friend request, and she came back to me and she said, I asked you 5 years ago. Oopsie. And when I look back through my messenger requests, I have some from, I think, the 2017. I think I have about 200 that I haven't. I'm bad. Okay. But at least I know a lot about the Maddie case, and that's good. So I will say goodnight to you, and thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I usually go out with something, but I won't. We'll just say goodnight for now, and rest in peace, Chris. Thinking of you.
Good night. Okay.
You know that I have to find the right mouse to be able to end the broadcast.
Yeah.
I went to my other one. Okay. Bye, Rabbit. Bye, Suzanne. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.